So
You
we're
know, they
still
made
a
it.
few minutes ahead of schedule, so that's good. How
They
was
made it
everybody's
illegal
New
to.
Year?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How was everybody's New Year?
Uneventful
That's good.
so far.
That's
Not too
good.
bad.
Yep.
Productive.
Did you say productive?
I did.
What'd you do, Mia?
Well, let's just say Chris knows about this because I was like, help. um, I have a set of triggers, right? I had four. One fell to the floor and broke into a million pieces about
Oh
a year
no.
ago. So I went down to three. And I'm okay with three, but I'd prefer four. You know, if I want to use three lights outside for something or whatever. But, four is a backup number for me. Okay. Well, then we got real lucky and everybody was in a really good mood about having a family picture made on Christmas Day. So I went out and set everything up and got everything together, and I couldn't get my triggers to fire. So I was really mad, and they didn't want to go outside because it was raining. And so I'm like, okay, well, we'll figure this out and we'll do it. Well, A led to Z, and it didn't get done right away. So the day that I was talking to Chris was the day that I figured it out. I sat in the floor and I pulled all my lights out and I did one trigger at a time, and I found the mystery one that just decided for whatever reason I'm not going to work anymore. But I solved it. So I made my goal was one of my goals. I have a few, but one of my goals, because there is 12 months. So for the year was to shoot at least 2 hours a day, 3 days a week.
Good for you.
Nice.
Holy
And,
smokes.
you know,
So you don't do your own
so
editing,
when
obviously.
Well, yeah, actually, I do some. Some I do and some I don't. It depends. For competition, I have to learn everything I want to know for each image because I feel even though you can direct someone in competition, for you can sit and collaborate and make sure that they're doing exactly what you want. I feel like that's pushing the line
Yep.
of integrity of it being mine. So that's why I just have to learn what I want to know, and so there's
What
where I'm
what
at,
lights
and I'm
were you
alien bees,
using? What lights were you using for shooting?
alien bees. It's what I have.
Oh, so you you say you needed more than one trigger, or you had more than?
Yeah, you need. Well, I do have more than one trigger, so I'm good, and I'm gonna as many people don't like to hear it. I'm going to adopt the ugly softbox for some stuff because there's so many tricks to making it not ugly. And every month, my thing is like, okay, I'm going to do this way, and then the next month I'm going to change up and do something this way, and I'm just going to keep moving myself through the year because here we are, still in the pandemic. Really, it's getting really hard to find clients.
Yeah.
Got to sell something,
Yeah.
so might as well be artsy fartsy stuff, right? And just keep moving, keep my goals going, keep my
Yeah, I'm
stuff
with
up,
you. I'm with you, Mia.
sharpen my skills, because the minute that this door opens, people are hungry. They're going to be hungry, and by God, I'm going to be ready.
I'm with you. My goal this year is to do one competition image a month.
That's very good.
So, just whether it's a commercial tabletop image or, something exterior, you know, just do something once a month.
Something,
And
yeah.
because my business is headshots, I mean, there's not much competition availability there for headshot photographers. You're not going to turn in client work for for a competition. So you gotta think outside the box. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
personal projects to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's something that I think CPP did for me was it gave me the desire to do something other than what I was used to doing for 20 years, which was following the herd, um, or
Yeah.
actually in my case leading the herd. So
Well, there you go.
Mia, let me ask you a question, and I'm not familiar with it, but do the alien bees allow you to optically trigger?
Yeah. So if I have
You,
one trigger, I can, it's got the built-in sensor, so it's going to flash. So
yeah, I would, make sure you are very familiar with using that, just in case your radio triggers fail, you got that backup option.
yeah. It's that's what the last few days have been, and I'm really pleased with all the results. So I'm like, cool. I'm just, you're always inching your game up, always doing your stuff. So, Chris, are
I,
you going to do 4 for your case though? Because we have competition coming up here in Oregon in February. So I'm trying to go 4 for 4 every time. So because honestly, if I get 12, and I know it's lofty, but you got to reach for something, right? If I was to get 12, I'd get my AFP. So
Nice. Nice. Well, my road with competition is just starting, so I've entered a few critiques, but never any competitions.
mhm.
So it's really more about, at least for me, competition wise, it's more about again stretching myself and getting myself out of my usual client comfort zone and doing something different and being able to listen to someone critique it. So
Yes.
that's the big thing.
Well, the trick to competition to me is buy that $5 critique, because it's so
Yeah,
well worth the moment when you get that back and you're like, ooh.
exactly. And the thing is now, because I think a lot of affiliates and states have decided to do online competition, you can enter a competition pretty much anywhere at
Mhm.
any month. And so if you've got 12 images, you can, stick your toe in the water with an image. And if nobody liked it, you can see what they said to improve it and try it somewhere else. Or, you got a lot of different options that way. So
Well, come on over. We got one in February.
there you go. Good.
Mia, have you just tried not doing wireless triggering, or you just don't want to upgrade to that, or just curious?
Uh, just hadn't got down that road yet.
She's using wireless triggering.
Is she? Are you using
I'm on
Godox?
the wireless.
Oh, the
No,
way
I'm
it sounded
using
like she was using an attachment.
Young Newell.
Hang on a minute.
So while Amelia goes and gets
Young
her
Newell.
trigger, we are about 2 minutes in. If I can get everybody to rename themselves, and in your name, could you please put where you are in the CPP process? That would be awesome for us to kind of know your experience. It looks like we have a few new people here, so it's good for us to kind of know how you're experiencing this whole process.
Who do you want me to be today, Chris?
Um, I like Skip Barber. Skip Barber's good.
I'll keep it,
Who do you
at
want
least
me
for
to
another
be?
week.
Of course, I spelled it clear wrong, right?
Hey, good
Awesome.
morning.
Good
How do you
morning.
enter your name?
Sorry, I'm more of a WebEx person. I don't know how to change my name in Zoom.
So if you go to your little square on the screen, in the upper right hand corner, there's a menu, three dots. Click
Found it.
there, and there's a menu item for rename.
Thank you.
Yep. And we're just your name and just where you are in the process is what we're kind of looking for.
Here we go.
So like I said, looks like we've got some newer people here. We got a new liaison. We got a couple declareds. So I'll open it up. I'll throw out. What kind of questions do we have? Anybody have any specific questions that we can address before we kind of jump off on other discussions?
Yes.
Go.
Okay. I have been looking at the image review, and one of the things that is mentioned here is that all evaluations are reviewed in the most recent version of Adobe Bridge Raw, Camera Raw only, Profile Adobe Standard. I did not find anything that was called Adobe Standard anywhere.
Chuck, that's
And
your
so
question.
I was wondering if somebody could like show me the money.
When you open it up into Photoshop at the
Yeah.
top, it'll say Adobe Standard. You click on the box because it says Adobe Color and all of that. And when you click on the box, it's a drop down menu. And then you click Adobe Standard and your values will change. So follow that rule.
Are you referring to doing it in Bridge then? Are you
No,
in Bridge or
no.
you're in Photoshop?
Photoshop.
Okay.
You're in Photoshop. So if you take a raw image, I'm trying to bring one up
Okay,
for
let
you.
me just record this thing, or are you going to be posting it, Chris, later?
I'll be posting it. I'll hopefully get better about posting it on time.
It's actually camera raw.
Right.
What's Camera Raw?
What it opens in Camera Photoshop does first.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna open my screen here, share my screen here in just a second.
All right.
Make
Can
sure
you
I
see your
am.
Mac?
That opened
You
it
just opened-
automatically because this image has already been opened in RAW. I don't know if I have a. If you had an image that you've already opened and already, can you go back to RAW somehow? Does anybody
Yeah.
know that?
Go up to, I think it's View or Window or something like that, right at the top.
So when it opens, it doesn't automatically like change the format, does it? In
No, you have to
Bridge?
do it.
Because in Photoshop, like, I mean, unless you quit out of it or close it right after you open an NEF, anything you do to it, of course, makes a subsequent, you know.
Chris, open an
I-
image up in
just-
Bridge and right click on it. It'll allow you to go to camera raw.
Wonder if I can do that in Photoshop. I
Somebody
don't
demo
have
it?
Bridge. Sorry, Skip.
There.
I use Lightroom. So, and then
That's a shame.
usually when you open an image in Photoshop, a raw image, a NEF image, it automatically brings up RAW right away.
Absolutely. If you're in Photoshop, go up to filter.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in filter.
And
Okay.
under filter, it'll say something about go to camera raw.
But are we still talking about Adobe Standard?
Well, yeah, because it's an
Will
option.
be. That's not what I want to do.
Please don't open your Sherman images in Photoshop.
I'm not.
So then
Seriously, because you don't
the
want to
idea
change it.
is that once you take your photos, your Sherman photos, that you can look at them, right? Somewhere?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
You're
be
saying-
looking at
you're
them
saying
in
not to open them
Photoshop.
in Photoshop.
No, because you can't save a raw image out of Photoshop.
Well, but you can close it without saving, and then it'll be the same image.
There you
In
go.
other words, it won't.
Yeah, if that does you some good, but I just go into camera raw.
The raw file's never touched. Even if you open it.
Kim, where are you located?
I'm in Arizona.
Thank you.
All right, well, what's going on here?
And then the other thing is obviously, I mean, when we're shooting Sherman, we have to shoot them in 8-bit, not in 16-bit, because there's no sense in doing 16-bit since they want it saved as a JPEG. No, they don't want it.
No, they don't want it as a JPEG. They want it as a RAW.
the lowest resolution that your camera permits
So,
as a RAW.
Right. Or the best way to describe that is
yeah, how we doing?
is to your
Yeah,
highest
just hanging out
compression.
at home.
Thank you,
Look,
Chuck.
Chuck, you stole my screen here, buddy.
Oh,
There it is, right there.
I do. I have the title and I am available.
I got him.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
Another thing I was going to ask is, hold on a second.
So here, real quick, I'm gonna share this with you, Renee, so you can, or Mary, so you can
Yes,
see what I'm talking about.
Go ahead.
So figures my people are covering up. Right over here, it says profile camera standard.
Yeah.
Come down, and there's Adobe standard right there.
Uh-huh.
That's what they're going to view them in.
Okay.
So, and your image opens up. What I do is I drag an image to Photoshop from its folder, and it opens up automatically in RAW. Is that better? Does that understand?
I think so. In
Did
other
you see
words,
where I changed that?
in other words, you tell it, you just pull it out of the folder and let go of it, and it automatically opens as camera raw, right?
I let go of it under down here in Photoshop.
Oh, okay. You pull it
And
in
then
Photoshop,
it opened up automatically in RAW because it's a NEF file.
right?
Does that make sense? Everybody
Mhm.
got that? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm out. So, and then you had another question about,
Okay, I was looking at those cards, the what are they called? Quizlet cards
yeah,
that have questions and answers. And one of the questions was Photoshop's command for a simple way to start using color balance is, and the answer is variations command. And I did not see any variations command. I mean, I have adjustments, but
Old
I don't know
question
what they
that
refer
doesn't
to as
exist.
variations.
yeah. You
Huh?
got to remember. You got to remember about some of this stuff is they're dealing with. My best guess is probably Photoshop 2014, maybe 2015. So it may be named something different.
Or
And
it might be the elements where they've got a bunch of tiles that show up and you can click left or right depending on how much more of that effect you want to add or not. That's the other option then.
Yeah, I would actually think it's probably CS4 or 5, Chris.
right, which that would have been around 14, right?
No, that would have been 2008 because I got CS5 and that was in 2008.
Right.
Quizlet
So
had some bad questions.
So that's kind of a weird question.
it's probably going to be somewhere in your blending modes. No, adjustments.
I didn't see it there.
You are 100% correct, Mary.
Okay, good. So I hope they don't ask that.
They won't.
I don't know.
I don't think that'll be on. They're going to hopefully weed out any of those weird questions.
I don't see where variations could be unless they're looking. Or, yeah, I don't know.
Huh.
That's definitely a weird question. Like I say, the only ones I know of are the ones where they give, they open it up and they give you a range where you can lighten it or darken it, and they give you tiles. You just click on the picture that looks like you want. That's variations.
They bring up what
I've
we
run into that
a
question
ring around.
before. I've had that come up to me before. It doesn't exist.
So no longer a thing. All right. Any other questions there?
You posted a question on Facebook, right? Chris?
Yeah, I will bring that up here in a minute. Declared. Get ready for. I'm just kind of going through the chat here real quick. Anybody, while I'm doing that, have any questions that we haven't talked about real quick?
Well, no, but I think I mentioned before that it was important for me to look at and the importance of making sure that you order in your kit 3 sheets of the background, because I looked and I
It was
found that I had ordered only 1, and I thought I had 3. So if there are people that are going to be taking the test, make sure if you've ordered a kit that you ordered 3 sheets. Otherwise, order it now because they might run out. And then you might have a color variance or whatever.
That is correct. It's you want to make sure that they sent you all 3, or that you make sure that you ordered all 3. So Steve in the chat says, I have choices for raw, uncompressed, lossless, compressed, and compressed setting in my camera. What you're telling me is to set my raw setting camera to compress for the Sherman shots. Yes, they want the highest compression that you can do with a raw image on your camera.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yep.
Yeah, the smallest raw image you can get.
Right. Yeah, normally I don't shoot that way. Okay, thank you. That's odd. Okay.
Well,
Yes.
you gotta stop and think. There's a lot of people sending it into them. And so consequently, they don't want somebody to send in a
Right.
big resolution image and somebody else a low resolution. They're kind of get them to match.
Sherman's compressed anyway, right? That small guy.
He's a little bit too dimensional.
Okay.
So Skip mentioned that we again, I'll remind you guys to change your name in the chat, or I'm sorry, on your change your name yourself, so we know where you're at, and also if you could kind of put what state you're in, that way we can kind of direct you to your liaison if we need to do that. That would be great. And so if we don't have any immediate questions, I can go to my question that I posted on Facebook. I figured I would start the year off with something I believe was a little bit easier. So the question is, you all see that? Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
The photographer fills the frame on a digital camera with perfect composition of subject and background. The sensor has a 2:3 aspect ratio. Which portrait size will use the entire image? And the choices are a 16 by 20, a 16 by 24, a 20 by 24, or a 24 by 30.
I know the answer, but if anybody else knows the answer, maybe they want to say.
Well, we can discuss what each of us thinks the answer is. That would be good. Or if you think you know the answer and you want to discuss why the others aren't correct, we could also do that too.
Does everybody understand how to calculate aspect ratio?
Pretty well. I mean, sorta.
You take the larger
That's why
number
they
and
let you
divide it
use
into
a
the smaller.
calculator.
Take the larger number and divide it into a smaller. Okay. Yeah, I figured it was that. Okay, so
Oh, we're getting some feedback from someone.
That's better. So you could also, in this case, another way of doing that, since you know both the aspect ratio that they want, and then you have your answers, you could also divide, and this may be what you just said, Jim, divide your larger number by the larger number of the aspect ratio. So in other words, I could divide 20 by 3, and that'll give me, what the ratio is for that.
6.3.
Right. So if we're looking for a equivalent to a 2:3 ratio, which of those four answers would come closer?
To complete out your thought there, Chris, which is a really good approach to think about, you take the 16 divide by 2, you take the 20 divide by 3, and as long as the 16 divide by 2 and the 20 divide by 3 equal the same number, then you know you've got it.
That's a good way to explain it.
interesting. Well, let me write that down.
That's a bit
That's
convoluted.
a wonderful
So
way to explain it.
here's how I would do it. Your sensor ratio is 2:3, so divide 3 into 2, you get 1.5. So one of those print combinations If you divide the longer dimension into the shorter, will give 1.5.
Yeah, and I think that's equally valid. The key there, since there's a lot of ways to slice bread, is to say, find a way that works, okay, and use the same approach all the time so that you don't end up going back and forth and not applying either one well. That's what I would recommend there.
Yep.
But your alternate approach is equally valid. Yeah, you're right.
So Mary had an answer. What do you think?
16 by 20.
16 by 20?
Yeah.
Nope.
I
No?
said B.
Who said B?
I did. 16 by 24.
Yeah,
That's
So
correct.
that's pretty
so
close.
kind of using Chris's approach, take 16 divided by 2 equals 8. 24 divided by 3 equals 8. Therefore, since they both equal 8, that's the same aspect ratio. Or who was it? Was it John? Who was it?
Yeah.
Alternative approach. Take them through the math on that approach. On that one.
Yeah, so you take 24 and divide it into 16, you get 1.5, which is the same aspect ratio as 3 divided into 2.
Invert that. It's 2 divided into 3. Yeah, but yeah, you're right.
Well, I prefer to work with numbers greater than 1, so I always divide the larger number into the smaller.
That'll give you a number less than 1.
3 into 2 is 1.5.
Well, 2 divided by 3 is less than 1.
Yeah, but you take the larger number, divide it into the small, and you get a number bigger than 1.
Oh no, that's an
1.5.
That's interesting vernacular, because I always I was heard that when you divide something into something else, is you divide that number into the other one, meaning 2 would be divided by 3.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting vernacular. I'm wondering if that's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it could be. one of many I encounter. Sorry.
That's very interesting, though. I like that. Learn something new.
Awesome.
Okay, could you all do all the math again?
So depending on which process you're following there,
Okay.
which do you think would be easier for you there, Mary?
Okay. Well, 2 by 3, I want to be able to do the mathematical, either one that gives me the true 2 by 3. In other words,
Okay, so-
when I divide it, I get 2 over 3, or
Right.
2 by 3.
So if you're trying to think of a different wording so I can tell it to you, say it to you differently. So if my sensor has a 2 to 3 aspect ratio, I divide 3 by 2 and I come up with 1.5.
Okay.
So then coming down to my answers, I can divide 16 into 20.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can divide 20 by 16.
Right.
And that would not come up with a 1.5.
Okay.
I can divide 24 by 16, and that would come up with a 1.5.
Right.
So B is your answer.
Right.
Okay, Mary, I'm going to give you a female perspective because it sounds like you're as good in math as I am.
Okay.
I don't think it's a gender-related thing. I think everybody has trouble with math and looks at it differently. So I don't think it's a gender thing at all.
No, it could be. So what they're trying to, so when you look at a picture, if one picture is 2 inches by 3 inches and you want it bigger, then just double it. And it's what? 4 by 6, right?
Right.
So then if you double it again, it's 8 by 12, right?
Right.
So that's basically what they're trying to do. So if you look at that 2 and 3, and then you look at those other numbers. So the first one is 16. So you divide 2 into 16, and that gives you 8.
Mm-hmm.
So then you take the 8 times 3, and that's 24. So A would not work.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So then look at C as an answer. You take 2 into 20, and that's 10.
Ben.
So then if
2 into 24 is 12, so that would not work, right?
Correct.
So you want something that's going to give you the same answer.
Correct.
So 2 into 16 is 8, 2 into 24 is
8.
2 into 24?
Oh, 2 into
3
24
into
is 12.
24.
So that's not correct.
Why are you saying 3 into 24 then?
Because
Oh,
it's
because
a
it's
2
2
to
or 3.
it's a
Okay, got it.
2/3 ratio.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, got it.
Can I step in here for a second?
Please do.
Okay, so I want to get off the numbers for just a second, okay? If I can just have your attention, not thinking about the numbers. The thing here is, why do they even have the question? And the reason that they have the question is because a lot of new photographers do not understand aspect ratios. And so then you have to say to yourself, why do they want me to understand aspect ratios? Okay, the reason that the PPA wants you to understand aspect ratios is so that you can be successful. How can you be successful? The PPA believes, as an organization, that where you're going to find your true dollars, your true making money ability is not in digital sales, but in prints. And what happens with a lot of new photographers, I see it all the time with people that come to shoot with me, is now with digital that they're understanding so much visually based on what they see. So what they're doing is while they're shooting in camera, they're looking and they're like, I like it, I like it, I like it. And they shoot visually what they see and what they're looking on the back of the camera. What you see on the back of the camera is a 2 to 3 ratio. You really need to understand that, because the most common large prints that you sell are 16 by 20 or 20 by 24, especially if you're doing a bridal portrait, and those are not 2 to 3 ratio. So if you know when you're shooting that a 2 to 3 aspect ratio is not for a 16 by 20 or a 20 by 24, you know that there's one solution. And the solution is you need to either step back or get a wider angle camera so that if you have a print, have you ever shot something where you go to print it and you can't print it because you didn't step back enough? And then you're like, holy Hannah, they just ordered a 16 by 20, but it's not that ratio. So the whole thing goes back to what is the importance of the ratio. And I think what was said here earlier is whether
it's my car. They're coming to pick it up today.
So if it was a 4 to 5 ratio or something like that, or a 4 to 6 ratio, you do like how they said, so simple, divide into each. And if the number is the same with the ratio, then you know that you have that ratio. But I think like I was so thrilled that they came up with this question, because the question isn't just about the math, about you understanding the math. The question is, why do they want you to understand it? Why do they want you to be able to do better so that you can sell more? And if you understand that, then that is the importance of the question.
Correct. Another good example, and you led to print sizes, Sally, but for us commercial photographers who shoot a lot of headshots, and we're all digital, but we have to keep in mind where are our images going to be used. So I shoot almost 100% of my headshots in a horizontal format, which is totally different from what a portrait photographer would do. Well, why do I do that? Because 99% of any profile pictures are square in format. Square are circles. So for me to adapt a horizontal image into a square, it's very easy. But I also can transform that image into, I can still do the 2 to 3, or I can do a 4 by 5 ratio for any type of print work that they may need done. Anything that may need to be sent to a printer for for work that they're going to do mailers or whatever. Also, I can also do a horizontal picture for them and have negative space so they can put copy on either side of that. So again, Sally's correct. Yes, it's important to know what a 2:3 ratio does in your camera, but it also is important to know that if you're using a different ratio of a print, you need to leave room for that.
As
I
all
like,
us,
I
to
like your
tail on
answer,
to what
Sally,
Chris
but I
said,
think what you have to bear in mind is that not all cameras are 2:3.
That's true.
So you really have to match the image sensor size to your print size if you want to get the maximum resolution. I shoot with Micro Four Thirds, which is 4:3 ratio. I also shoot with 4:5 film, which is a 4:5 ratio, etc., etc.
How are you? Hold on, I just gotta.
Where we coming from?
Get her off.
Good discussion on ratios.
I really
Any,
thought that when I was shooting with my crop sensor and trying to print, there was only so far I could go with my prints without starting to get some degradation in my resolution and all, no matter what I did. So moving to a full frame afforded me a larger print without stress.
There's another example here too. I mean, working with clients, they'll be sitting there in a sales session, and they're going to ask you about an 8x10, and they love this image as an 8x10, and then they ask for it in 11x14. And if you think about it, the 11x14 aspect ratio is almost the same as an 8x10. And so as a result, you should feel okay with saying, yeah, I can print that into an 11x14, not a big deal. Might be a little bit different cropping, but very, very minor difference. If they ask you to go from an 8x10 to a 5x7, that's a big difference. And so you need to kind of take a step back and say, well, let's explore what that would look like, because I don't want to say I'll give it to you as a 5x7 and then have important stuff end up having to be cropped out or something, and have the finished product come to them something different than they expected to see. So that's a flag for me. 8x10 to 5x7, let's be careful. 8x10 to 11x14, not a big deal. So understanding those ratios helps you navigate that conversation with your clients.
And that's a beforehand, what is the ultimate goal? Where are these pictures going to be? If they're just going to be on a website, or are you hanging them on a wall? Do you want them in, above the fireplace? What are you looking for? Because I can build you a house, or I can build you a dog house. Which one are you looking for?
And the other thing to keep in mind too, because I do mostly volume. And in my cameras, I use the ovals. I've got Nikon, so I use the oval for top and bottom, and that gives me an 8x10. Because everything I do goes online, and the parents have to be able to print any size print and not have cut off heads or anything. So that's kind of where I use that at.
Yep.
Navigating aspect ratios is important.
Yes, knowing how to do the math is important. But Sally is so right, because it's really, this whole thing is designed as to make you better, and your mind needs to go from one point to Z. Okay, this is what I need. This is what I have to do. This is where I want to go. This is what the client wants. You have a clearer path to how to get there.
Correct. So I'll open it back up. Any questions that anybody might have?
Yeah, question
on
for
ratios?
the whole group, if I may.
Yes.
I'm a CPP liaison. I have been for 5 or 6 years, and I've been teaching locally in Arizona in-person classes for a number of years. And I'm challenged with the whole idea of trying to teach CPP classes online. My classes run for nearly 20 hours, and I'm really concerned about how well it's going to work with a Zoom call. Has anybody got any experience of teaching this detailed, extensive material online by Zoom or otherwise?
Yes, I do. Not in this field, but I have an online learning portal. what I would suggest you do, Jim, is to pre-record your lecture videos.
Oh.
And then take when you go through your live webinars, you can just play those and then answer questions. And that way you don't have to keep reproducing your work. That's my advice.
Oh, wow.
So produce a course. If you want to look, I'll just link my site in here. I have over 1,000 students. I teach healthcare providers.
Okay.
So I can help because I've been doing this for 5 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know a lot about online learning. So check that out.
And how do your participants feel about sitting online for that length of time? Or do you limit each segment?
What we did, this is what I was doing earlier. I'm sorry if I'm taking time away, but this is, if you want to know about online education, I know a lot. I was doing 5 4-hour live webinars per week.
Okay.
Okay, which is just ridiculous. It's 20 hours a week. And asking somebody to sit there for 4 hours was just absurd.
Yeah.
And people just, they don't want to sit in front of the computer for hours on end. And so then the licensing board, the main one that I work with, they changed their requirements, and then we could do something called interactive distance learning. And that meant that for the contact hours, I set up a private forum where people could communicate asynchronously. That means, if you know what the asynchronous means and synchronous, those are key terms in education. So no matter what time zone you're in or what your schedule is, you can communicate with each other, not in synchronous time. In other words, you can post a question, somebody will answer it. That counts as contact. So we were communicating in a private forum, and that met the requirement for contact hours. Therefore, I didn't have to do any live webinars. So I just stopped them. But you could incorporate both in a hybrid model.
And I guess the advantage of recording is that people can see it at their own pace, right?
People go at their own pace. There's no time limit. They're always welcome. I did not charge a subscription fee. I don't like subscription fees. You take the course one time, it's yours forever. So there is another limitation if you want to talk about that more. Well, anyway, I don't want to take too much time, but if you're required to take a recurring course, then you need to go to some other model, like a subscription model, or allow them to reset their progress.
Okay. Now, have any of the participants online who are not yet CPP taken any of these online CPP classes yet, or are they still too new to have experienced them?
I'm going to be taking one during the imaging.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'd be really interested to hear how it works for you.
Speak up, Michael.
You know, these are great questions, Jim, because this is the way of the future. This online learning is not going away. And I think we're all going to become more sophisticated at it.
I think you're
I've
right.
got 5 years experience in it back to 2015. Actually, end of 2014 when I launched my site.
Thank you, Steve. I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, keep in touch, man.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Jim, you are planning on teaching these classes to a group of people, not just to one individual, right?
Yes, that's right. I typically teach in groups of 4 or 5 students, and I've always done it in person. And I'm just trying to think about how to translate that to remote learning, and just looking for experiences people had had with it.
Right. If I can add one more thing, anybody who's taught classes, it gets old after a while to have to keep repeating the same information, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to move forward, but you want to have a core curriculum that people can refer to. So that, if you think about it in that way, then you can design your courses to be interesting to both you as an instructor and also to the students to keep moving the art of whatever you're teaching forward. If you think about what that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Glad I asked.
Alrighty. Which city in Arizona are you? Where are you near, Jim?
Not far from Phoenix, in a town called Gilbert.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I know where that is. Okay.
Southeast of Phoenix.
Great. Thanks. Good to see everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good crowd. Now, you guys meet every week. Is that correct?
Yes, every week at noon.
Okay.
On Tuesdays. Well, noon Eastern time. For all y'all weirdos that are out there on the East Coast that like to get up at 9 o'clock. So, any other questions?
So I have a question, but it's basically for the liaison, so I'm not really sure. I have a
Sure, go
question.
ahead.
Okay, so this is really geared towards doing the Zoom things. Chuck, can you help me out here? Chris or anybody? So how are we going to do
The Zoom,
for the checklist? For the checklist,
yeah.
the Zoom
Yeah.
checklist. How are we
The
going to
image.
divide those up? Just by the person that reaches out to individuals?
Chuck and Sally on the last submission set up days where they were available to do them, and they filled up time slots. And as I think, as individuals of our collaborative, the people that kind of sponsor this Zoom thing, we will each volunteer if you want to do that type of thing, or if you want to sit on them. We will allow for that. It will be part of our next discussion as to when we got to look at the calendar, because it's coming up quick. So
Sounds like that'll be a discussion topic for Thursday, huh?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I know that Steve is interested in going through his checklist with me. So
Yep.
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Mia. Sherman's gonna get shot this week. I don't know if he knows it yet.
There you go.
Well,
You
don't
put a
make
target
it
on them at
bad.
the
I'm
end.
gonna do it. I think I'm gonna do it today. So
oh, I
time's
love
up,
these
buddy.
German images back here, Chuck. It's all Google eyes.
Sherman's a little nervous. He's so shaky.
Now, one question I have is, was it you, Chris, who mentioned that you'd be willing to help in order to set up the phone in a way that is acceptable for taking the test so that you can use it as a, an adding machine or whatever?
Yeah, to set up your webcam and your desktop on your computer. It's really just kind of are you on PC or Mac?
Mac?
What you need to do is go into your administrator settings and set up guest.
You
And
mean,
then when you go,
what are you referring to? On your computer?
yeah, you go into, let me see if I can
What
show
you're doing is you're creating a new user called guest.
Right,
Okay.
You would go to the Apple up in the corner.
right. Go to your system preferences, and then go into security and privacy, I think.
On.
Nope. Maybe. Nope.
Users?
Yeah, users.
Okay.
Users and groups. And you add a new user.
Okay.
Add a new user and call them guest. And then when you go to take the test or proctor you, make sure you're logged in on that user. But you also have to make sure that are they using Zoom? No, they're using their own platform. You just have to make sure that you can get to what they need to do.
Okay. And what about the phone?
What about your phone? You don't get to use your phone when you're taking the test.
Well, I'm
You
not.
have to have a speaker though, Chris, on your computer.
Well, it's no different from doing a Zoom call at that point.
Well,
She's
I
got
know
a
some
speaker.
computers don't come with speakers and microphones unless you buy them separate, like I did.
Right. Yeah, you have to have a webcam, which most webcams today have microphones and speakers. So,
If you're looking for a
not
good one,
speakers.
I bought a Creative Live cam for like $42, and it comes with a
Yeah.
1080p camera, and it's amazing. So, not very much.
I found a lot of use for a better webcam than what was built into my computers.
Yep.
And so, if you do some research on Amazon, they can range. Good one ranges anywhere from $50 to $125. Some of them have better reputations than others. Some of them look for some of them that come with software so that you can manipulate your image a little bit. the one I bought doesn't have that, so I have to do everything with lighting. I don't care for it, so I won't tell you what brand it is. I just refuse to give them a good rating on Amazon.
I'd like to make a comment about ProctorU.
Yes.
I took my exam through ProctorU, and before I took my exam, they have a system checkup where it runs through your audio, your video, your RAM, all that stuff, and tells you whether or not you're going to be okay technology-wise. I passed all of that, and then when my test started, all of a sudden stuff wasn't working.
Yeah.
Which got me very, very nervous, and I ended up getting into tech support with the guys at ProctorU, who controlled my screen, controlled my computer to try and figure out what the problem was. Turns out the problem was I did not have Flash and Adobe Flash enabled.
Oh.
And that's a big deal right now because Adobe no longer supports Adobe Flash. And it's, I think before you get into the test, start asking questions about that because it definitely was a problem.
I had
and the thing is,
I had the same thing happen. That's
Apple doesn't support it.
Right. Sorry.
Well, now they're telling, all the security people are telling you to disable it, if you have it enabled. So, I mean, it's a big deal.
But they want it enabled, is that correct?
What's that?
Do they want it disabled or enabled?
They want it,
Proctor.
They need it to be enabled. And how I figured, and how I had it manifested was that it asked me to hold up my driver's license to the screen, and there was a black box which should have been mirroring my driver's license, and it was not. And so I couldn't even get by authorization to get into the test until somebody told me, oh, it was your Flash.
And how long ago was that?
I'm sorry?
How long ago did you take that test?
Let's see, the last image submission was when?
October.
Okay, it was the beginning of October.
Yeah, that's not mine. End of October.
And can you do me a big favor? And I always hate to put more work on your people's plates, but can you email that experience to PPA to Julia Boyd, please?
Yeah, Julia Boyd.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
sounds like they've got a problem with their app. They need to update it.
Yeah, I put it on the loop, but I don't know whether anybody really looks at that.
Right, they do, but if you're going to Julia Boyd or if you're going to Odessa Sabato, they directly work with CPPs and the CPP process, and they also work with ProctorU, so they kind of need to know when we're having some issues with ProctorU. Not that they would change, but we're a big enough organization. We're giving them almost 400 tests a year. I don't know that they would listen to that a whole lot because there's universities that are using ProctorU. So, but we're also not a small, school. So
now, because Ann just mentioned that they scan your driver's license, I mean, that's a lot of information that they're getting. And what kind of security do they have? Didn't you say that they were located in China or something? Or
Philippines.
Philippines, even worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been there numbers on.
You have?
Yes.
Ah.
No, they're good people, but that was not malicious. But that's a good question. I mean, security is so important now.
Huh.
If they were hacking into people's private data, I don't think they'd be in business very long because they'd be caught probably.
Well, my daughter took a entrance exam into a nursing school, with Procter U. So I have a feeling they're probably pretty legit and their security is probably fairly decent. So
They're
I don't
good
think I'd be
people.
too concerned about it.
They're struggling just like we are with the whole process, I think.
That's the main reason that we recommend that you set up a guest account, because you will have to put Procter U's extension onto your browser. And then once you're done with the test, you delete that guest account.
Yeah, I'm going to try that next time I use Procter U, because I have to take the drone test next through PPA, and that's through Procter U. So
I'll put Julia Boyd's email address in the chat, so if you need that, and that'll get you there.
Got it.
Thank you. How about that? We got any last minute questions? We're down to about 10 minutes.
I've been reviewing the color theory stuff. Is there anything in particular you guys think that they might actually hit in the color? You know, between the CMKY and the RBG and all that stuff.
No, all of it, JR. All of it, man.
Well, yeah, I'm obviously going to know it all. I just didn't know if there was something that you know you guys find that somebody might get hung up on or anything like that.
Well, I would be thinking about how to manage like balancing out light. So with incandescent and daylight, and focus on the real life experiences where you have to deal with color is where I would head with that versus just every possibility. You know, those are the ones that make the most sense as far as posing a real life question for you.
Do they gear it more towards actual correcting stuff on what you're actually shooting, or do they do more like, oh, if you're printing yada yada yada, or do they have both?
They'll probably have I wouldn't say it's one way or the other, but what I would say is you know, the best way for you to learn it and to be able to recall it is to have it hooked up with some sort of real life experience that it was useful for.
Absolutely. The whole thing is scenario and the knowledge you bring to everyone.
Yeah, as I recall, they had some that were, you know, practical use, you know, you're shooting in this lighting condition and everything that's like this, what do you do? And then there were others that were, you know, you have this color, what is a complementary color?
So
exactly.
And then some of the questions involved you figuring out the additive colors and or the subtractive colors. So you need to understand both of those. And what I did when I started mine, first thing I did is I drew the color wheel, well, two of them, one for the additive colors and one for the subtractive colors. So I didn't have to stop and think when the question came in.
Yeah, I mean, a real low-hanging fruit one would be like if you have your camera, if you're working with a strobe light indoors that has incandescent lights, then how would you manage, what color filter would you put on your strobe light to be able to photograph it correctly?
Blue.
Well, not incandescent.
Well, oh wait, you're trying to turn the strobe light so that it resembles incandescent?
Correct, because you want to have
one. Add a warming filter.
Yeah,
you want your photos to look warm
throughout the entire room, you know.
Okay, yeah.
Depending on, I guess, do you want your photos to look orangey warm, or is that the style that you're deciding to go with? Or do they want, you know, basic, you know, daylight balanced inside?
Well, no, that's not it at all. Is the thing is if you're inside and you got incandescent lights inside and your strobe light is not 3200, right? Then anything close to the camera is going to be a white balance based on 5400. Everything off in the distance is going to be dark yellow because it's all 3200. So you want to have a filter on your strobe light such that it casts the same hue light over the whole room. Okay, and then your camera, you can shift your white balance in your camera so that it will compensate for that overall yellow, and therefore you're going to have stuff close up in the right color space as well as the stuff off in the distance. But the key there is you have to make your strobe light look like the rest of the light, so you have only one type of color light in the room to deal with.
Got it.
Because hence your question was the strobe, and you always have to think about exactly what they're asking you.
Right. Yes.
Ron's right too.
I mean, you can't
Yeah,
just go over
don't-
here. You got to, okay, this is what they want to know.
Right.
Yeah, don't try and read into the question.
Yeah, no.
You answer the question exactly as it's written. Don't overthink it.
Well, and the other thing, like with that sort of question, draw pictures. Because if
Yeah,
you draw
you can-
pictures, sometimes the answer falls out.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. I took mine written and I had something on every backside of the page, you know, getting myself through the test. And
You
I
only have
had
one
my
page.
extra sheet.
There's only one piece of paper though. Mine was filled up.
Oh, well,
Both
you
sides.
did it online, so you only got one. I did it
One
by
piece of
hand.
paper. Yeah.
I did it the old-fashioned way, Scantron.
Hey, even when I did mine in person, I was allowed one sheet of paper.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. I brought my background.
My
paper.
proctor did not stray from the rules one bit. It said one piece of paper, and that's all she let me have.
Yeah, I brought my background paper. That's what I brought.
I was sure when you get a chance.
Now, I got an 8.5 by 11 sheet.
I got a big piece of paper here.
Is that feet or inches?
I took when I took the exam, I'll tell you, I wrote down every single aperture, ISO, everything. I wrote down everything. I did the same thing that Chuck did, wrote all my colors down. As soon as you said start, man, I was like, my pen was going like 100 miles an hour. I was writing everything down. I had the filters, I had the differences, I had all that stuff written all down. There was nothing they were going to get past me. And don't, like she said, don't read into the question. Read the question and sit back and just kind of went, okay, what are they asking? All right? And don't try to read into it, because if you do, you're going to start trying to think about, well, if I'm over here with this kind of this and that. No, don't. Just read the question and answer it. You know, that's basically what I did. And yes, I failed it the first time by 1 point. So yeah, I'd rather get kicked between the legs than that. You know, I mean, it's kind of one of those days, you know. And but I passed it the second time around. Okay.
Well, my
I passed it
proctor
the second time
said to me-
around. Excuse me?
My proctor said to me before we started, he said, go through the ones that you just, you know, they're coming off the top of your head like they're flying out like butterflies, you know. Just
You can't do that on the online one though.
Oh, you
have to
can't?
finish no, you have to finish the page, then move to the next.
You got to finish the page in order to move to the next.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
That's-
you can go back.
What I
You can
did
go
was-
back to questions.
Okay, what I did was I marked the answer that I think was close, but I wrote it down on my scrap piece of paper to go back to that particular question, so I can move on to the next one. You know,
Yeah,
You can't move past the page until you've answered every question on it?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
5 questions
page.
on a page. You have to answer all 5, and then
Okay.
you can move to the next page. But as Michael was saying, you can jot a note saying, yeah, question 14, I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
And then
But you
later
have to
on,
do that.
You can go back
That's
to
what I
it.
did.
Well, that's good to
And
know.
then
Thank you.
What?
Because, yeah.
What happens if you're not sure of one, Chuck?
Just
Oh,
put
I
an
did-
answer down, write that question number on your scratch paper,
Yep.
and then at the end, you can go back through all the questions again, from what I've been told.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
I did.
Chuck's right. That's what
And
I
so
did.
after you've written, you get to a question you're not sure of, just pick an answer, write that question number down, and move on. And then
Okay.
at the end, go back to that question that you wrote down and see if you want to stay with that same answer.
Yeah, however, let me ask Chuck and everybody else. Oftentimes, your first impression is the right one. So,
93% in education.
okay, yeah. So be careful about that.
The thing is, also, a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a question on the next page, the way they ask it may give you the answer to the one
To
that
the
you're
other.
sure of.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's true.
there's that too, yeah.
And if that happens, then you write another note next to that question number for when you go back to it.
Good point.
I found that on all questions. If I'm not sure, if I just keep going, one of the questions further on in the test will give me the answer to the one I wasn't sure of.
Mhm.
Right.
Now,
And I see 3 people that haven't said anything. Ramon, Deb, or Renee, you guys have any questions?
I know I came in late. Hi, everybody. I'm Deb from
Hi,
Michigan.
Deb.
Hi, Chuck. Chris and Chuck.
You're all right.
Hi, everybody. And I could probably ask this next week, but I am struggling with these equivalent exposures. So that's where my focus is right now. So, but I take my exam again on the 28th.
Okay. So Deb, if you want to set up a one-on-one, I'll be glad to do that with you. We can go over those. Let me know when you're free. We can, work on equivalent exposures. It's
Okay,
something
Chris.
that, we can go and do a deep dive on that.
Okay, I'll reach out to you.
Now,
I've been running into Deb a lot lately. She also runs in some of my networking groups, and so we just did a whole 2-hour class on Saturday. It was fun.
If I could say one thing about my Skip was one of my liaisons. People, if you are taking your test, you rely on your liaisons. They are your lifeline to passing that written exam. I promise you that. And Skip and Craig were just tremendous in helping me get past that. Chuck was very instrumental in helping me get past my images. So guys, use your liaisons. Don't abuse them. Use them though.
Now, about the phone, I was thinking of using the phone as a calculator. In other words, I have a calculator in my phone.
They won't let you.
No,
you got to use a real calculator.
A real calculator.
Yeah, they're $5.
That depends on your proctor too.
The ones you buy from Walmart for $5.
Yes.
Huh?
It depends on your proctor too, because I was able to use mine.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Was that online or in person?
Online.
Yeah, see, my proctor made me set my phone way over on the other side of the room where I couldn't even see it. But she gave me a cheap little calculator to use.
You know who
gave it to him,
Must have been Sally.
Must have been Sally, yeah.
I never seen anybody pass a test so fast in my entire life. He got done and he said, "I'm done." And I said, "No, are you sure?" Because he had it done like so fast.
It took me maybe 30 minutes.
30 minutes?
Well, after I wrote down all my notes. But then what really drove her nuts is after I was done, I sat there like this for about 5 minutes. Did not move, just sat there, my eyes closed. Finally, I just grabbed everything, stuffed it in the envelope, and said, "I'm done."
I said, "You can't be." And he said, "I am." And I'm like, "Oh, God."
You were sure of yourself, Chuck. That's good.
I was sure, and I passed.
Well,
Okay.
that's, yeah. That's
then
what counts.
The thing I did in preparation for it is, don't listen to this part, Skip. I took Steve Kozak's test. I kept going through his online tests, and every time I got one wrong, I researched, not only in his book, or barely in his book, but I Googled until I understood what the right answer to that question was and why it was the right answer. And I just kept taking the tests over and over again until I was scoring in the mid to upper 90s consistently with those practice tests. Then I took the real test.
Yep. Of course, I did a mentorship with Sam Terrell, and I said the end of my goal here at the end of this mentorship is to pass this test. And he worked me like he put up with a lot of nonsense until I finally got it.
Well, and then also
imagine
during the whole process, every time I helped Sally with something, she would quiz me every time we did something.
Well, that's exactly what Sam would do to me. I'd ask him a question and he'd flip it around and he'd make me answer it. And I'm like, "That's not helping me." And he said, "Yes, it is."
Yeah, I remember once in the middle of the shoot, she shut one of the lights off. Like, okay, what happened? What do you? Why is it like that? What happened? And I'm like, I'm in the middle of shooting this headshot for this guy. And all of a sudden, it wasn't working right. And I had to stop. She turned off one of the lights.
Cool.
Well, there's your thing right there is, you have to go through each scenario, and the test is written scenarios.
But I learned.
Yes, and that's what counts.
So,
she was a very good mentor.
Yeah. Yeah, good mentor is good. We're getting ready to go into overtime here a little bit. I do have a scenario that I'd like to talk about. It deals with working with stage production lighting, LED production lighting that I ran into over the weekend. If somebody's fluent in that, if they'd like to hang out after the call, that'd be great. I didn't understand why some of the things happened that happened. So if anybody has any experience there, I'd like to talk about that. I don't understand. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. That if you need to jump off and get back to work, go do it. Have at it. We're at the beginning of the year. We got to get our work done. So I appreciate that too.
Steve has a quick question.
Sherman, before we go.
Thank you, everyone. I got to go.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. I'll see you next week. I'll reach out to you, Chris.
Thank you.
Never mind.
Chris, I might be able to help you with that.
Okay. Well, Steve, you had a question?
Yes, this is probably really silly, but you see how Sherman's feet, I pointed them down here?
Yep.
Well, his feet can turn. If he's floating in space, does that make more of a shadow, or how critical is his position?
Not very.
Yeah.
They just don't want to see his arms out to the side. They don't want to see, or him folding his arms, or, doing the Captain Morgan, that type of thing. They just want to have.
Chuck's got shown on his background.
Okay. Yeah.
Steve?
He shouldn't look like any of the pictures in my background.
Okay. Yeah.
Now,
okay.
I do have to say, though, Sally, when Chuck and Sally were helping me and I was doing the depth of field ones, we couldn't see his feet at first. And they reminded me that we kind of need to see the edge of his toes. So I had to get in there and take a pencil and kind of just lightly move his feet a little forward.
That's what I wondered. Right.
And then when I'm doing the horizontal, shots, but then I could see his
so
toe.
you put his feet forward, Mia. You put his
Little
feet
bit
forward.
on those. Yes, I did.
All right, thank you. That's what I was wondering, how critical this was.
And it made a total difference in the quality of the image.
I don't know how critical it is, but based on the sample pictures, when you're looking down on Sherman, you could see his feet in the sample pictures.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's yep.
But how they're tilted is not important, right? Tilted down, up,
toes forward.
Okay, forward. Right.
Toes forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't turn them backwards.
His feet should not be out to the sides.
Okay. All right. Correct posture.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Steve.
Sure. I know it's silly, but
no,
it's not. There are no
important.
silly questions because as soon as you don't ask a question, that's the one thing, you'll get struck by the universe and dinged on. So.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mia.
So I ran into a situation over the weekend. I was shooting at my church, and I've shot under stage lighting for many, many years. But for many, many years, it's also been tungsten stage lighting. I mean, really hot lights. You get that underneath there, and you're sweating, that type of deal. So my approach in the past at high schools was always I would just set my white balance to 3,200 degrees Kelvin, and maybe bump it up a little bit, but not much, and let the colors pan out the way that the production wanted it to be. So a new scenario with LED stage lights, I could not get skin tones in any way to look any good. What I ended up having to do, I dialed my Kelvin temperature all the way up to 10,000 on a Nikon to get any type of good skin tones. and then when I brought them back into Lightroom, and this is that Nikon thing that we ran into with on the Sherman images, where the Nikon will change the Kelvin temperature in any Adobe product. So when I brought them back into Lightroom, it said my Kelvin temperature was actually 5,700 degrees Kelvin. But what I shot it at, I know, was at 10,000. So anybody have any explanation on what's going on there, I would be willing to listen.
First, I wanted to ask you, were you using a flash at all?
No. When I'm doing production, when I'm doing production work, I'm using their lights. I try to not to be a part of the production by setting off a flash.
Are you shooting stills or are you shooting video?
Stills.
Stills, okay.
What ISO were you shooting at?
I was probably, it says at 2.8 and 250 3/20th of a second. So I was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 1600.
Mm-hmm. And shutter speed?
250th or 3/20th.
Why that fast? Was there a lot of motion?
I was using my 80 to 200 one to stop hand motion. I was hand holding.
No.
Were they all white, or were there any colors in the lights, or just plain white?
No, there was some colors in there. There was a lot of teals and some dark blues. And then at one point there was some oranges, but even then it was just wigging out my sensor.
Well, we've been noticing we're still shopping for lights for the garage, and we've been noticing a lot of these LED lights. They're all, you got to look at the color temperature on them to see what they are. And I told my husband I wanted daylight balance in there, and he, they're all coming up as far as when you start digging into the brands, daylight balance. I don't know about stage lights, but it might be a good idea to find out what brand of light they're using, so you can look it up and see what their Kelvin is.
The ones I use are adjustable, so that's nice to have. But how accurate they are is another question. I mean, you should check the accuracy, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these are professional stage lights at a church. So I mean, and because they're production lights, because it's designed for production, they may change the color of the light, because they want it to be a certain color for their production.
And they're computer driven. Do you know?
They are computer driven.
Yeah. I'd check and see what's going on and see what their balance is for starters.
Right. So I know, like I said, I know that it kind of solved the problem just to dial my temperature up to 10,000 and then what I didn't want is to have just god awful cold, ugly images on the post-production side, and to be able to dial them back a little bit, but even then I didn't have to dial it back a whole lot in Lightroom. It was just very perplexing why the Nikon and Adobe handled it the way it did. I got what I needed out of it the way I wanted it to, but the way I used to do it with tungsten lights did not work. I could dial in on certain stages in high schools. I could dial in 4,000 degrees, with a tungsten stage lighting, and I would get what I would want. At the end, I would have to do very little post production.
I wonder if it's a problem with your camera. Maybe you should check your camera.
And no filters?
It's happened on two different cameras.
Okay.
It's happened on a D500 and it's happened on a D750. And I shoot both in RAW.
They're both Nikons though, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying?
I don't know. No, I like Nikon cameras. I've owned a number over the years.
I get a little defensive about my Nikon.
Check to see if it's some issue that I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
That's
I have
weird.
no idea.
I know that there for a while I had to, and early on with LED lighting, I had to be real, pay a lot of attention to the flicker reduction on my camera. Some of these, and Skip probably runs into this, some of these football fields where they're switching over to LED lighting, it became a huge pain in the royal tuchus, especially if you're shooting something real high speed where you would get just god awful variances in your exposure because they went to an LED lighting platform that is actually the flickering lighting platform.
And if you're shooting, on a turf field, the turf actually reflects off those LED lights. That's one thing I used to see a lot of. You just get that reflection back at you, and I used to have to tone down a lot just to get the colors right. You can see the numbers on the back of a white uniform.
Right.
I do a lot of production. I did a lot of production back then, and but I didn't know if it was video or stills. I know one of the problems we have is that, and then they change the lighting on you, right in the middle of your shoot, and because they go to a different type of setup, and next thing you know, you're standing in the dark, and the other ones now you have to move over or something to get yourself back in the light again.
Right.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm listening real closely, but I have a couple contacts that can probably help you. My son works at a church. He does more sound stuff, but I would imagine that he could help you. If you'll call me when you get done, because I wasn't listening to the actual question. I know what it's concerning, but give me a call.
Right.
I can
I
find
got your number. I wrote you. Thanks for the comment in the chat. I appreciate that. I got your number down.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Now, just out of curiosity, Chris, were you shooting auto exposure, or were you shooting like shutter priority, or?
I use pretty much straightforward manual. I was 2.8, and I chose between 250 and 320, depending on the amount of light. And then I'd have to look back on because there was some variance in some of my ISOs. I'd have to look back. It's anywhere from 800 to 1600 was the top, I think, on my ISO.
Yeah, one of the things that I used to run into when I used to do production like that is you got one light's on full power, another one's on 50, so you're trying to shoot into that particular thing. Now I'm talking video production, and that lighting goes down, and then in post you have to jack everything up again, just to get it right. The one color that I had a problem with was teal.
Yeah.
You enter one set of lights it's teal, the next set of lights it's blue, and the next set of lights is green.
Right.
Trying to keep the colors the same. I know what you're going through, Chris. Yeah, I've been through that situation before, but not on a still photography, but on videography.
Right. Which is becoming very similar these days.
Yes, it is.
I'm curious. We were talking about new toys and stuff like that. I'm curious to see what happens when I switch over to mirrorless. What the new sensors are like, because they seem to be more geared towards video, and it's going to be a whole new learning curve again. So.
Yeah, it's a big investment in sound equipment.
Yeah,
all about the sound when you do video, not just.
Yeah, see, I'm not that much other than what we're doing. I'm pretty low key when it comes to video work. I do a couple of production, not even productions. I have a guy that puts on a seminar once a quarter, and he's kind of been put on hold that I record that for him. It's a one camera production, and you're right, the audio was the hardest part of the whole deal.
Audio and then camera stability, so you're going to have to look into a gimbal probably.
Yeah, well, I was on a tripod. I just shot the whole thing on a tripod.
Money, Chris. That's what I'd suggest. Prepare for that.
One thing I've always done, and going back to video production, is I've always had two or three different angles when I shoot something like that. because you never can tell what happens to your camera. 1 minute, and you get the kid that puts the thing on automatic focus, and you tell them, "Don't do that," because once they close the curtain, everything goes to snot, right? And then you come back and and all of a sudden your curtain comes open and the lights are on. Next thing you know, it's all blurred out. And I said, "I can't get the blur out." I said, "Put it on manual focus."
Michael, do
you know.
You shoot B-roll too? Do you have a B or C roll going? That's important too, right? You need 2 or 3 cameras.
Well, I thank you for your time on my head scratcher here.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a portrait photo that was shot on a cloudy day. Shot it in portrait. Mom wants it in landscape. So I need to go back and fill in on the sides. Do I have to shoot it on a cloudy day or can I shoot it on a sunny day?
I would try and match your background as much as possible.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay.
Just because, and I'm thinking in terms of what your background might have been, whether it's, got some trees back there or whatnot that way. Whatever it is, there's going to be some shadows in there.
Yeah.
And you want your shadows to match.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay.
And the other thing is, unexpectedly, even if it was a cloudy day, you still probably want to try and match the time of day.
Yeah, I thought about that for sure. Yeah.
What have you got on both sides of the subject?
It's a curved sidewalk, and I have crepe myrtles on the right and a bush on the left.
Can you duplicate them and move them?
Not enough. I can on the crepe myrtles, but I can't on the left side. I don't have enough on the left side.
What about a free transform through Photoshop?
A what?
A free transform?
What's that?
So if you were to select a box on either side, and then go to star T, and you can actually stretch it. It depends on how much you have to stretch it, whether it's going to look good or not. But it might be worth trying to do that as opposed to reshooting.
Okay, I'll try that.
That's exactly why you'll find us sports photographers always shooting landscape, because the rule of thumb is you can change a landscape image to a portrait image, but it's very, very difficult to change a portrait image to a landscape image.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Right.
I might have to change my way of thinking.
Or when you go in and you do a shoot, always just do one of each. That way you have something to play with.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're shooting because, a lot of this is at the moment and you don't want to have to go back or, anything. You just want to kind of say to the client, okay, I got one of those. Let's see how
that. Well, this was one of my difficult clients that I would just soon shoot as to have to deal with, but I still have to deal with her. So I'm gonna figure it out. Thanks, guys.
You'll get it, Renee. You'll get it.
Oh, I will. It'll just take a little longer. So
yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Sales, there's retouch up.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
So
have a good day.
You too. So Steve, good luck with shooting your Sherman images. Let us know.
His shoulders were tilted. That's why his right arm is longer than the left.
There you go. Yes. Thank you, Chuck.
Steve, if you need me, just text. You know how to find me.
I will.
Can't tell you the answers, but I can.
Liaison pin yesterday.
I will.
Pardon?
Nice.
Chuck?
That I got my new liaison pin in the mail yesterday.
Really?
Yeah,
Just yesterday? I got mine in December.
Oh.
Yeah, I had to wait
He's
until
down the list.
2021 to get
Oh,
my
see, Admire, Odom, they probably did it alphabetical.
They do those things alphabetically by random.
Alphabetically random. Yeah, nice.
Video.
All righty, guys. You guys have a good week. We'll see you again Tuesday. We'll see the liaisons on Thursday.